So remember in the Wayback Machine of our minds, 2022, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signed a bill that was known as Don't Say Gay. The bill banned public school teachers from holding classroom instruction about sexual orientation or gender identity. The official name was more like parental rights in education. And the opponents of this bill, and often the news, referred to it as Don't Say Gay. The provisions in the bill were about informing parents if any health information was offered, including discussion of sexual orientation, including even when caring for a single child, not necessarily in the large classroom. The scope of the bill and its essential silencing and erasing of anything related to lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and so on was obvious. This was an effort to squash any conversation. The Trevor Project said the provisions appear to undermine LGBTQ plus support in schools and include vague parental notification requirements, which would effectively require teachers to out their students to their legal guardians without consent, regardless of whether those adults were supportive. In essence, the writers in support of the bill aimed to erase any mention of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, plus sexual orientation, gender expression, and so on, as part of a larger effort to erase whole populations from society, or at the very least deny their existence. And any mention of anything other than straight placed jobs and lives at risk, as well as reducing access to healthcare and emotional support to young people. Now, in defiance of that bill, people found a multitude of ways to say gay. It was kind of like the really fun thing to do like that year. I don't know if you remember this. Say gay. Woo! Come on, help me out here. Say gay. Yay! Now, those of us who could did so with enthusiasm. Good job. As an act of resistance, but also as an act of solidarity, and to point out the ridiculousness of the whole bill, even as it left folks in fear for themselves and for the children who needed them. And I participated, I was right there with it. And thanks to a certain evil empire social media feed, there were lots of advertisements that were kind of boosting this say gay moment. And so I bought the shirt that said say gay on the front, which this one does. And then on the back, it says protect trans kids, read banned books, teach all the history, teach all history, show love. Show love. Say gay, protect trans kids, read banned books, teach all history, show love. That sounds so hard. That sounds so controversial, so radical. And yet, now I don't wear the shirt often. I figured I should show up with this today. But I've started to use it more when I travel. One, it's a good travel shirt. It's nice and dirty and black, spills, right? So when I travel, whether by plane or by car, one of those moments in the course of traveling will feature me with this shirt. Last year, I wore it on the day when my family and I were driving to our Unitarian Universalist Association annual gathering in Baltimore, Maryland. And that was the day we drove across West Virginia and Virginia to get into Maryland. And not like the big highways either. No, this is the mountainy, wiggly ones. Yeah. Now, in the wearing of this, I have yet to receive a negative comment. On the other hand, at least once on every day that I wear this, people stop and compliment me. Say gay, protect trans kids, read banned books, and teach all history and show love. It is a small form of resistance. It is personal and public all at once. It is a witness and a word that might inspire someone, that might encourage someone to say, yes, I can keep doing this too, or at least let folks know they are not alone. We've just finished a month where we talked about the theme of practicing resistance. We have had more practice than expected. I had plenty of sermons to do. Oh my goodness. But we're entering into a moment, I'm going to take this moment to transition a little and talk about both resistance and resilience, which is our theme for this month, embodying resilience. And I want to thank my colleague, the Reverend Linda Susan Ulrich, for some of the good resources that really inform this sermon. So, resistance. We can think of resistance as the ability to recognize and resist negative social influences and risk behaviors, including learning to go up against those who dare limit who or what you choose to be, and to advocate for what defines the best you can be. So, resistance is to recognize and resist negative social influences, risk behaviors that might limit who you are and who you can be. Another way to think of it is resistance may be thought of as a form of psychological and behavioral immunity to distress and dysfunction. It is immunity, psychological and behavioral, immunity to distress and dysfunction. So I think one of the great companions with resistance is, in fact, resilience. Now, I want to say, so the word resilience, I think, can be sometimes overused. It's one of the words that people often come up with when someone they know is facing hardship, and we don't always know what to say. We don't always know how to comment. Sometimes the scope of what they're facing is so big, and we don't really have a lot to kind of unpack the entirety of it. And so there can be a temptation to say, well, this will make you stronger. You'll come out of it better. You'll be more resilient. Oh, they're so resilient is a great compliment. Right? I mean, it is. And it seems to be also, I think there's moments when can we retire resilient a little bit? Thanks, I don't want another reason to be resilient. I will not wish upon anyone another flipping resilient experience. Yeah. Yeah. Like, no, no, no. I don't need more. You don't need more. No. Okay. So that being said, let's claim it instead. Resilience, one definition is that it is a process of people dynamically and positively adapt to the context of adversity. Adapt within, not to, within the context of adversity. And that can include various factors of individual and group, the population, to all learn resilience, adapting or becoming immune to overcome risks, and to rapidly and effectively rebound from psychological and behavioral disruptions. So there's a real and, I think, in the resistance and the resilience. As my colleague, Reverend Linda Susan says, a way to think about resistance is that it helps us keep out the negative impacts, and resilience helps us bounce back from the negative impacts. I'll say again, resistance helps us keep out the negative impacts. Resilience helps us bounce back from the negative impacts. Resistance interrupts harm. Resilience helps us respond when it shows up. And by all means, the experience of resilience and resistance really begins with our own selves. What does this mean in our bodies and minds and souls. And it is, of course, highly subjective. How I receive something, how I respond to something is truly based on my perception, my emotions, my history, and much more. And there's much to be said for, and we complement one another on kind of wrestling with the struggles that we go through and finding a way through. When faced with a night of the soul, we find a path into the morning. And that is indeed something to cherish. Our individual capacity and potential is powerful and not to be underestimated. And at the same time, it's easy to put all the pressure on ourselves and take all the responsibility, saying it's got to be up to me, and I'm a failed character. I have a failing of character if I don't figure it out, if I don't respond with resilience, if I don't rise, if you will. It's such a challenge we have ingrained from our society in so many ways that we think we should have to navigate the world by ourselves, no matter how hard. What's also daunting and can undermine any resistance efforts, especially whether grand or modest, is the impossibility of a proportionate response to the depth and scope of terrible attacks and oppression in our world. There is no way that I, as one person, can survive and resist the scale of fascism and oppression and bias in the world. There is no way that I, as one person, can do this alone. And so the impossibility of this, of being able to feel like we can at all be strong enough. And yet we see more stories, and it is relentless, all that is so heartbreaking and violent ends up being taken in by us, and we feel stuck and holding far too much pain and don't know what to do with it. No one person can possibly be a whole movement. But then there is. Then there is this relationship between resistance and resilience. Resistance and resilience. And it can show up and be intertwined in so many ways. In response to the results of the election in November 2016, the beginning of the first Trump administration, many of us really knew it would be bad. We didn't know how bad, but we knew it would be bad. And that was for many of us was a deeply embodied response. There was a Unitarian Universalist leadership training scheduled for that immediately following weekend. The leaders for that completely restructured it. One of the moments I remember best was something of a sacred storytelling, hearing about anti-blackness, which is so much at the root of so much of our racial bias. Might have racism against folks who are Black, but everything that's also not white is along the spectrum. And anti-Blackness is kind of a starting, like the worst of it, and then it kind of all shows up from there. And we got to hear about this from my colleague, the Reverend Carlton Smith, who is a Black gay man. And we had this along with the shared support of the leadership and the members who were gathered. We were singing together, we were learning, we were processing, all over a long weekend. It's from folks who are ordained, folks who are professionals, but also just members of our congregations from the area, from Dallas, Fort Worth, and beyond. Now, after that training, one of my responses was to wear, and they were passing these out at the training, was to wear those silicone bracelets, said Black Lives Matter. My last Black Lives Matter bracelet, because I was kind of giving them away, given 2 sets of these away in the course of things with my previous congregation as well. The last one broke just before Christmas. I'm impressed that it survived that long. Now, at the moment, I conveniently had a rainbow bracelet. Bummer. Not a bad option either, right? I hope to order more Black Lives Matter bracelets soon. If you want in, come talk to me. Now, I wear the Black Lives Matter bracelet because I really want to hold that value in front of me. As I said, I've been wearing these since 2016. Not many people comment on it because, it's not necessarily like people are looking at my wrist all the time. But it was and is the right thing to do for me as a white woman and as a minister to affirm the presence of those who are Black, Indigenous, people of color, and keep showing up and keep that before us, before myself, until all lives actually matter, because we know that not all lives do right now. Yes? Author and guide Adrienne Marie Brown, in her work Emergent Strategy, says resilience is unveiled when we are triggered, injured, heartbroken, attacked, challenged. Resilience is unveiled when we are triggered, injured, heartbroken, attacked, and challenged. As mental health in our society is recognized as a part of our human experience and carries less stigma with it, part of our language in our society includes PTSD, post traumatic stress disorder. I would make the case that at least since the pandemic, our brains are not as ordered as they once were. Some people will say, mine was never ordered to begin with. I recognize that. That's okay too. We are experiencing a collective PTSD compounded by racial awakening with George Floyd in 2020 and the rise of fascism. One likely is amplifying the other in terms of the impact on us, the harm done, the diminished capacity, and so on. And perhaps this is also related to a certain desire to seek out a strongman figure for leadership, but finding out that that figure is not at all in line with what's more important, which is the care for our neighbors. My colleague Linda Susan put this together about traumatic stress disorder and post traumatic growth in the world of resilience here. Post traumatic growth describes someone's capacity to turn a traumatic event into an opportunity to heal and grow, while another might be totally undone by the same event. The phrase is often used in contrast to post traumatic stress, although post traumatic growth is not without stress, and people may still exhibit PTSD symptoms. There's an article that was looking at post traumatic growth and post traumatic stress in veterans. Gives the example of someone who may have become more spiritual and closer with friends and family following a war. They might have more connection, but they also might still be experiencing nightmares and a startle response to loud noises. Researchers found that high levels of certain traits in a person make post traumatic growth more likely to develop. And these include interpersonal ones, such as humor and kindness and leadership, cognition, creativity, curiosity, and fortitude, honesty, bravery, temperance, forgiveness, modesty, fairness, transcendence, gratitude, hope, and zest. Openness, agreeableness, effort, and perseverance also were positively found. And on the other side, greater levels of perceived harm and threat and uncontrollability during a traumatic event was associated with higher levels of growth in survivors of trauma. So, what the researchers found, there was a path here. They found that pro social behavior, defined as actions intended to help another person, such as volunteering, service, providing financial aid, these activism oriented deeds are seen to have a positive social impact on the individual, the community, and on a global level. Pro social interventions rooted in altruism may be helpful to facilitate resiliency in survivors of violent trauma. This may be especially true for individuals from collective cultures and individuals who have naturally gravitated toward activism following trauma have experienced greater well-being from helping others. They regain control, reconnecting with community and with meaning making have helped the trauma survivors feel empowered, feel resilient. And while many westernized interventions are aimed at a specific pathology, PTSD and depression, anxiety, a specific diagnosis, activism as an intervention may increase a person's overall being, thereby making it more holistic. So, in a deeply traumatic moment, what the researchers found was a higher likelihood of increased capacity of healing, of being able to connect, be with one another when people were in service to one another, when people were able to respond and care and genuinely help another person, just to simply be of service. It's also good to note how much so many of these characteristics were showing up in terms of creativity, of energy to reach out and beyond the self and have a sense of humor, have a sense of fun, have a sense of letting go in that form of forgiveness, of simply being kind, and how all of that was fostering hope, possibility, and energy. Certainly in this moment, we've been benefiting from the value of humor, both as a way of just releasing a good laugh, but as a way of revealing truth, reminding us what is important, pointing out that the emperor has no clothes. I'm so sorry for that image. I'm moving on. Moving on. Spiritually, metaphorically, yes. Oof, baby. See? John Oliver, John Stewart, we're just going to go there for sometimes on Sunday morning. You just never know what's going to show up. All right. Revealing truth and reminding us that what we see is really happening. Reminding us that what we see, what we value, what is important is in fact real and true. And then being able to find a little humor, to find a little joy, and to laugh together. To laugh together, which means that we keep breathing. We keep breathing. We're not just holding it in and waiting for the next blow, right? We keep breathing. We keep affirming our experience of the world. Yes, the world is here and it's real. And as awful as it is, knowing what's actually real helps us be able to then make a plan. So appreciate that Heather Cox Richardson does so much of this work for us and then says, I want to know the facts because then I can make a plan. There we go. And to not allow ourselves be diverted by misdirection, by denial, by outright lies. Serving together, serving others, helps us reveal and sustain what's important. As my colleague Linda Susan says, resistance helps us keep out the negative impacts. Resilience helps us bounce back from the negative impacts. Resistance interrupts harm. Resilience helps us respond when it shows up. And it keeps coming round and cycles back and forth and back and forth. That resistance and resilience can simply be showing up in the wearing of a t-shirt, the wearing of a bracelet, saying, I am not yet defeated. We are not yet defeated. You are not yet defeated. There is more hope out there. We keep choosing and showing love. We have seen so much resistance and resilience in Minneapolis in recent weeks. It is not without harm. Whole communities have been torn apart by these attacks, by the kidnapping, as well as the inability to go to work, go to school, pay bills. It is February 1st. Rent is due. I can only imagine how many people are completely panicked about whether they're going to be able to keep their home. The scale of the damage is without measure. It is impacting generations right now. There and us as well. And this conversation between resistance and resilience, I think one builds on the other. Faith keeps being restored and amplified. The people are showing up, more organized than certain leaders can even understand. Because caring and compassion is more valuable than corporations. We get to be decentralized and powerful both. We get to be in relationship and acting from deep love. And as we are in this moment of this season and cycles, reminding us of so much is possible, so much is becoming, even when we can't perceive it, we know it is still there. So let us go forth in faith and hope and love and keep saying gay. Gay. Amen.